Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 311, and we are concluding our 5-episode series all about social life and friendship, especially for neurodivergent kiddos who are being homeschooled. This episode today is for you if you are a parent whose kiddos crash out after social time, seem fine during events, but unravel later, resist future invitations because recovery just feels too hard, or they want friends, but they can't sustain that connection. You've got this. Before we get started, though, I want to give a special shout out to our sponsor for this episode, CTC Math. We really appreciate their support. Check them out if you are looking for a math curriculum. I'm going to talk a little bit more about them later on in this episode, but CTC is a phenomenal math program that is adaptable to any kid, no matter what their needs are. So check them out at ctcmath.com, or if you click through the links in the show notes or in the description for this podcast, wherever you listen to your podcasts, you'll get a special discount just for Raising Lifelong Learners listeners. All right, let's get started with this episode. Pop those earbuds in and let's get to it. If your kiddo melts down after a play date, shuts down the next day, or needs 3 business days to recover from one social event, you're not imagining things, and you're not alone. Today, we're talking about those social hangovers, what they are, why they happen, and how to build recovery plans that protect connection instead of burning kids out. I remember a friend of mine used to talk about this all the time with me, and we would say that, okay, we're going to do this thing on this day, but we're not going to be able to plan anything the next day or the day after because our kids are going to need to recover. They're going to have that social hangover, and they're going to need to get back to baseline so that they can do the next social thing. I feel this way often too. In fact, I used to joke that, and it was like one of those jokes rooted in truth, that the pizza guy at our old house, the place that we used to live, knew our name and our schedule, because every Thursday, which was our co-op day at the time, I would be so burnt out after teaching kids, after running the clubs that happened after lunchtime and all of the social things that went along with that we would order pizza every Thursday. And the pizza guy he always worked on Thursdays. In fact, he gave us a card with his friends and family discount at one point, so we could use that discount when we ordered for our family of 6, because he just fell in love with us so much and felt like he was our friend. So he would stop by with the pizza, obviously, because he was our delivery guy, and would ask the kids, how was co-op today? What did you do? What classes are you taking? Because I was so burnt out. There was just no cooking that night. I needed time to recover, and I needed time to de-people before I could get to the next peopling. Today, we're going to talk about that. We're going to learn how to recognize social hangovers for what they are, plan recovery before your kids melt down or burn out, pace social life realistically so that we don't burn them out, and we're going to learn how to teach our kids to honor limits without avoiding social connection altogether. Because let's face it, sometimes, especially with our kiddos who really struggle to bounce back from that social time, the idea of doing it again is a recipe for burnout and a recipe for avoidance. And we don't want to get to that point where the recovery isn't worth the interaction that the kids get from it and the relationships that they build. Okay, so what is a social hangover? What am I even referring to when I say that? Because that is not a technical term. That is not like a diagnosable situation. I am using this term to describe the nervous system's delayed response to social effort. For neurodivergent kids especially, but for all kids in general, but especially neurodivergent kids, socializing often requires masking, constant self-monitoring, sensory tolerance, emotional regulation, cognitive load. So even when it looks fine in the moment, the body keeps the score. You've heard that term before. There's a whole book about that. And it's so true. When you're pulling all of those things together and everything needs to converge in order to make a social interaction actually beneficial in the moment or successful in the moment, your body, your kids' bodies are keeping the score of all that goes into that social situation. And sometimes it feels insurmountable. And sometimes the body is just done and broken down afterwards. Common signs of kiddos and adults, frankly, who struggle with social interactions and the subsequent fallout with social hangovers is an irritability or emotional kind of explosions afterwards, withdrawal or shutdown, physical complaints like headaches, stomach aches, fatigue, a refusal of future social plans. We want to reframe this in our head because it's natural for us to be like, okay, they're just behaving badly, or they're overwhelmed or overstimulated, and we need to do more of it so they feel more comfortable next time. Let's reframe that in our heads to say to ourselves, this is not poor behavior, it's delayed processing. There's so much that goes into meeting new people or keeping conversations going or doing the safe entry points and exit points and thinking about all of the things that we've practiced in the previous episodes that it's a delayed response socially, emotionally, physically, mentally that our kids are processing and they need to process it and we need to support them. So, why are our neurodivergent kids more prone to social meltdowns or social hangovers or any of these kinds of things? They're especially common for kiddos who are autistic, have ADHD, are anxious, are gifted and or highly empathetic, or are PDA leaning. The reasons include, but aren't limited to, the higher sensory input that social gatherings and social situations lend themselves to, slower emotional processing for a lot of our neurodivergent kids, difficulty exiting interactions early or before it becomes overwhelming, and the pressure to be okay socially. This is an important distinction to make because wanting friends doesn't mean having an unlimited social capacity. In fact, a lot of our neurodivergent kids really want to have a good friend. They want to have a large social group, but they just don't have the capacity to be able to manage that on a day to day basis. And sometimes those social situations are so overwhelming to them that they just can't bounce back and recover from that. I know that I, in particular, have a difficult time managing all of the input that comes with a social situation. I need to monitor what other people's facial expressions are telling me. If I'm entering a large group, I've got to scan the group and try to find like a familiar face. And then I've got to bring myself to go sift through the crowds to get to that safe space, start up a conversation, which always feels awkward to me. I am definitely a person who leans more introverted, especially in social situations. So I don't always know how to enter into a conversation, especially when I'm like the newer person kind of on the block. And that can be really emotionally draining to me. I know that one of my kids in particular is always worried that they're going to make a comment that feels dumb or feels inept or feels socially awkward. And so they often don't engage in conversation at all and sit there quietly. And sometimes, unfortunately, that sitting there quietly and taking in what's going on in the room can feel to other people around you or them like you're stuck up or full of yourself or think you're better than them. And that's just not true. The person, your kid or you, who are sitting there quietly observing, really just don't know how to enter the conversation. This was something I struggled with personally, especially in high school. I was always hyper aware of what was coming out of my mouth, what people were potentially thinking. I'm very highly empathetic. It's one of the traits that makes me good at what I do. I can empathize with just about any person I'm talking to, parent, teacher, anybody. And I can get to the emotional core of what they're feeling and going through and use that to help them be successful in their parenting or their homeschooling or their teaching or whatever it is. And it's a gift I have, but that gift comes with struggles. In order to be the empathetic person, I'm often sitting at the fringes of conversation and just observing because I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I know how difficult it is to have conversations. So I don't want anybody to ever feel like I'm taking over or overpowering them. And so I often revert to just keeping quiet. And in high school, especially when you're not gregarious or outgoing or in the middle of the conversation all the time, and you're sitting back just watching, people take that as, especially if they don't know you well, they take that as, oh, she just thinks she's better than me. Or she thinks what I'm saying is dumb and is just thinking. We create these narratives in our head about what other people are thinking based often, erroneously, on what we think of ourselves. And so we're projecting that onto other people. It's why some of my children will often think that other people around them don't like them, but it's really that they don't know how to talk to them, just like my kids don't know how to talk to that to the other kids. And so they'll project like nobody likes me onto they're not including me in the conversation because they don't like me. And of course I'm not likable when they feel badly about themselves and feel self-deprecating. And the other person's just wondering how to talk to them and would love to get to know them, but they don't know how to enter a conversation either. And so we have to be really careful about creating narratives in our own minds about what other people may or may not be thinking, because the truth of the matter is, most people are really in their own heads the majority of the time, thinking either poorly about themselves or that others are thinking poorly of them. And we're all just sitting there completely misunderstanding what each of us are thinking about each other. So we want to help our kids understand that, yes, this is tough for you. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and we were talking about how sometimes it is easy as parents of neurodivergent kids, especially as homeschooling parents of neurodivergent kids, because we are everything to them, right? The teacher and the parent and the friend and the confidant and all of the things, to err on the side of my kid's brain is wired in this way. So this is just how they are. And while we do absolutely need to respect who our kids are and how their brains are wired, we also need to help them understand that other people come into each individual situation with their own brain wiring and their own life experiences. And in order to live successfully in a society that has people of all different makeups, all different brain wiring, and all different experiences, we need to make sure that we're finding ways to understand how we're wired and our own preferences, and then use those to help get into other relationships and get along with others. So we can't use our brain wiring as an excuse for not behaving or not following rules or laws. We need to use our brain wiring to understand what we need to help us accommodate for ourselves in certain given situations. And if your child is a super high intelligent and empathetic person, we need to help them understand that their empathy, their deep love of everybody else and desire for them to be comfortable and happy cannot always come at the expense of themselves. They need to advocate for themselves while supporting others. For those kids who are hyperactive or have ADHD, we need to help them understand that it's harder for them to control their impulses than it is for others who don't have ADHD to control their impulses. But it's still just as important for our ADHD kiddo to control their impulses in a situation to provide safety for the others around them. And when we're involving our kids and helping our kids get involved in social situations that are going to be overwhelming for them in some ways, we want to help them understand how their brains work so that they can use accommodations to help them get into those situations and make the best of them while getting along with others too and preserving those other people's safe spaces as well. In doing this, we want to make sure that we're recognizing our own kiddos' social energy window. So, what does that mean? Everybody has a social capacity window. We want our kids to know we want to really know our kids. This is another example of being a student of your child. You want to identify how long can your kiddo engage comfortably in a given social situation, and maybe figure out ways to extricate yourself and your child before that threshold or that capacity is reached. We also want to understand what would push our kid into the yellow or red zone. So, if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, we've talked about the zones of optimal development and the ranges of optimal like social engagement and their own bodies and how they feel. And we've talked about it in relation to like red, yellow, and green. Green means all systems are go. They're in a great social situation, a great social place, and they can do whatever they need to do to be successful in that situation. Yellow, maybe we're like faltering a little bit and we need to take a look at what's going on and make some changes. Red, we need to get out of there and we need to make some changes now because we're on the verge of a meltdown or already in the middle of it. So we want to know what pushes our kids from the green zone into the yellow and into the red before we engage in social situations, so we can watch for some of those triggers and some of those trip ups and then help them through them. We also want to be able to recognize early warning signs of our kids reaching that capacity so that we can support them and mitigate some of the struggles that go along with that capacity. Some things for you to consider as you're thinking about these things in terms of your child. How does my child act during social situations and social times versus afterwards? Make notes. Keep a little teeny tiny notebook inside your back pocket or inside your purse and just jot some things down. What's your kid doing in the social situations? Are they engaging? Are they sitting back and watching? Are there areas in which you could potentially have a social story and chat about it before the next social gathering? And then when you get home, what's happening? Are they like me, retreating and saying, I need some time to de-people, so I'm going to go to my room or I'm going to go read a book? Are they like raring to go and want more and more? Are they needing to get out some of their excess energy by like baking or cooking or jumping on the trampoline or going for a walk? What is it your kids are gravitating towards when you get home from a social situation? And then ask yourself, do meltdowns occur at all? Do they show up hours later, the next day? What are you seeing as a result of those heavy duty social days? One of my kids in particular, when they were very young, it would show up the next day. We would have a miserable day the day after co-op or the day after a therapy session or the day after a field trip. And we would need to take that day low key at home to recover. Whereas another one of my children was done immediately. And I'm actually like that too. When I get home from co-op, even now my kids, the two kids that I'm still homeschooling, are a little bit older. They are 13 and 16. And when we get home from co-op, we get home around 12:30. We all go our separate ways. And a lot of that is because I need a little bit of time to, we call it de-peopling. And I pop my earbud in and I sit in my chair in my office, which is it's next to a very calming wall. It's in the corner of two walls. One is very calming with a deep blue color, and the other is very calming with little twinkle lights. I turn off all the other lights in my office and I sit in that chair and I listen to my audiobook. I don't read, I don't draw, I don't do work, I listen. Sometimes I just sit there and I scroll, but I just decompress. So, what is it your kids are doing immediately after you get home, the day after, the next day, the 2 days later? What's going on? How many social days in a row are too many for your family or for your individual kids? I've got one kid who is the most extroverted of extroverts. This child would be happy if they were going every single day. In fact, as this child has gotten older, I know that they need to get out of the house at least once a day in order to be their optimal person. So, what is it your kids need? Shift the language in your mind from they didn't fail socially to the plan that we had in place extended their capacity. And then work to retroactively go backwards and fix the expectations so you're not overwhelming their capacity the next time you need to do something together or socially. Okay, so let's talk about math. Specifically, let's talk about finding a program that actually works for your unique homeschoolers. In our house, we've been using CTC Math for years, and Even though I am so appreciative that they sponsor this podcast, I am a paying customer. I'm still a paying customer even with their sponsorship because it's just that good and I love supporting great companies with great programs. With 2 kids still at home, both with very different learning needs, CTC Math has been the flexible and dependable solution that I keep coming back to. One of my kiddos needs more time to process math concepts, and I love that she can move through the lessons at her own pace without feeling rushed or behind. My other kiddo, he flies. He jumps straight to the end of unit tests to see what he already knows, and then we only focus on the lessons that fill the gaps. That kind of customization is gold when you're homeschooling gifted or twice exceptional kids. CTC Math gives you the access to every grade level from kindergarten through 12th grade with your subscription so that your child can accelerate, review, or jump around based on their own needs, not based on some rigid curriculum structure. And because it's video-based with clear instruction and auto-graded lessons and quizzes, it frees me up to support my kids without being chained to a textbook, teacher's manual, or whiteboard. So whether your child needs more time or is racing ahead, you can tailor it all with CTC Math. Check it out at ctcmath.com. You will see why so many homeschool families trust it. And if you've got quirky math learners like I do, I think you're going to love it. If you have any questions about CTC, like I said, we've been using it for years in our homeschool, and I encourage you to reach out and ask me any questions that you have. If you do pop over there, let them know that I sent you and let them know that you appreciate their ongoing support of homeschoolers everywhere, especially those of you here at Raising Lifelong Learners. All right, let's get back to today's episode. Okay, so now that we've thought about that, let's think about how we can build a recovery plan before the social hangover actually happens. Recovery works best when it's planned and proactive instead of reactive and in the moment. A simple recovery plan can include a predictable ending. Set a time limit before the event so you know because you've studied your child's capacity. Use visual timers or exit cues for your kiddos. Have a hand signal, have a countdown signal. Hey, we're just to let you know we're leaving in about a half an hour. Okay, we're going to be going in about 15 minutes. So wrap up whatever it is you want to do before we leave. Okay, we've got to leave in 5 minutes. So start gathering your stuff up and get ready, say your goodbyes, and then go. Leave while things are still going well. You want to make sure that you're not extending the capacity. You're ending before the capacity is hit because this is going to limit the social hangovers that you have as a result of a social situation. Then your next step after you've planned that predictable end is to have an immediate decompression time. That's like me with my podcasts or my audiobooks or my just vegging out time in my office. Have a quiet ride home, have headphones or silence if you need that, a familiar snack or drink waiting for you. No questions, no processing, nothing to reflect on the social situation until you've all had time to decompress. A predictable ending time with lots of visual cues and leaving before capacity is reached while things are still going well. A quiet ride home, silence, headphones, an audiobook, whatever it is you need, decompression time, and no reflection until after decompression has happened. Then take some regulation time. Once you've decompressed as a family, take some movement time. Go for a walk, do some swinging, do some heavy work, do some cleaning, push some laundry around. Do whatever your preferred solo activity is, or do some sensory comfort, like using a sensory blanket, or dim the lights and chill out, like I do in my office. The kind of reframe you want to have and the script you want to use with your kids is we're home. You don't need to talk right now. I've got snacks and quiet ready for you. Let's talk later about what you loved and what was your favorite part about our social time or our play date or our field trip or our co-op. Once you've had time to decompress, let me know. Then you need to start thinking about your day after plan. The day after your social time, especially when your kiddos struggle with social hangovers, matters just as much as the immediate follow up. You can have some helpful supports in place. A lighter academic load, perhaps, for your homeschool that day, more autonomy, more preferred choices or strength based learning the day after. a predictable routine, and fewer transitions. So, bigger chunks of time spent on things they're really passionate about. Avoid stacking multiple social events on top of each other. So, it's back to back. Give yourself that day after to decompress, revive yourself from the hangover, take a lighter load, and get some big projects done. Avoid framing your recovery needs as avoidance. A lot of times, I think almost always, our neurodivergent kids or neurodivergent parents aren't avoiding social experiences and activities and events. They are recovering from other ones. I absolutely love the current co op that we are a part of. I love the families that I've gotten a chance to start to talk to. I like the potential for my kids that we have. There's some cool things that they're trying to do and coming up. I wish that we had started it years ago when my kids were a little bit younger, so it was easier for them to make some friends. But one of the things they're trying to implement recently are moms' nights out, which I would love to be a part of because I'd like to get to know some of the moms better and better in order to make some of those outside play date times or whatever for our kids. But the last couple of moms' nights out have fallen on the same night as a co op day. And I just don't have the capacity to do it. It's really hard to get me out of the house unless I have to for one of my kids on the same day that I've been gone all day. We obviously, when my one theater kid was still at home, would have rehearsals and other things like that going on the same day that we had a co op, and I'd have to regroup and take her back out for her rehearsals or whatever. But I don't have that right now. I have those evenings free. In fact, actually, right now, I have those evenings are booked with the group coaching program that I'm running, the Neurodivergent Homeschool Parent Circle that we just started. And that meets every Tuesday night. So I'm not able to do now anything outside the home. I have to be home for those coaching calls. But it would be hard for me to do anyway because I've reached capacity. So we want to make sure that we are giving our kids the benefit of the doubt. They're not avoiding things, they're recovering, and recovering is okay. All of us need to recover from different things. And I am an introvert who needs to recover when I've been on all day. And I teach at the co op and I'm making sure my kids are doing what they're doing. And then I'm trying to talk to parents afterwards while my kids are in their social time. And so it's a lot for me. I was recently talking to a parent. I think it was actually at the co-op. No, it might have been no, you know what? I was talking to one of the parents who are in the new parent circle with me, and we were talking about how common it is to learn about yourself as you're learning about your children. And I have learned so much about my own neurodivergence raising my neurodivergent kids. And that is one thing I've come to really understand about myself is that I need time to recover socially and emotionally and mentally from social interactions. And it's okay. It's not avoiding the next one, it's just recovering from the current one. Recovery time makes future connections possible. And if we can remember that and respect that, then we can be even more successful as we go along and we can teach our kids how to honor their own needs in the process. Which leads me to teaching our own kids to notice their limits. We want our kids to understand what makes their brains tick and what their bodies and their brains need. And so, this powerful life skill can help our kids notice signs of overload before it becomes a problem. We can help our kids by teaching them to notice their limits. And this is a powerful life skill. It helps them notice signs of overload early. So they're not being overloaded again and again. And they can recognize and advocate when they're feeling overwhelmed before they get to that breakdown point. We can help them name their feelings. So they're really understanding what they're feeling when they're feeling it. This is something we work on every single month, no matter what the theme is in the Learners Lab. Understanding what their body's doing, naming their feelings, being able to articulate it, and problem solve for the different feelings. We can also help our kids ask for breaks without shame. All of us need breaks sometimes. So understanding when you need a break and then taking that break is super duper important. Some simple questions to ask your kids right now. What does your body feel like? Easy peasy. Whatever they're feeling, ask them to identify what their body feels like in those moments so they can start connecting and recognizing what feelings and emotions do to their body and vice versa. Do you feel green, yellow, or red? So going back to that very like tangible articulation of the continuum of feelings. And then what would help you recover faster? Would you like to be left alone? Would you like me to be here with you? Do you want to talk to me? I just had one of my kids tell me that they can't find something. And I said, do you want me to come in and just talk to you while you're looking, or do you want me to leave you alone to look? Giving them the ability to articulate and the tools to articulate what they need in a given moment can help them build self advocacy and not fragility. A lot of times, people tend to think, some parents, some outside telling us we're coddling our kids, think that this is just setting them up for failure, like they're not going to be able to be successful on their own. And nothing could be further from the truth. When we help our kids understand what their bodies and their brains need in a given moment and be able to articulate it without shame, we help them advocate for themselves. We help them learn those self-advocacy skills, which actually makes them more resilient, confident, and stronger. We want to, in conclusion, pace social life without avoidance. So, pacing means finding fewer but more better fitting interactions, good relationship building situations like co ops or classes or sports or whatever that is going to help, but they're higher quality with more recovery time built in. If our kids need the time to recover from their social hangovers, we need to build that in and not overload their schedule. We need to honor their capacity without closing doors. We could do this by doing only one social event per day or per week, whatever is needed. Have buffer days with no plans in between days with plans, or alternate social and solo days. We want to remember, though, that burnout can look like avoidance, but pacing can help us prevent it. So we want ultimately social connection to be adding to our kiddos' lives, not costing them days and days of recovery. So when we plan for nervous system needs, friendship now becomes sustainable, relationships become sustainable, social interactions become sustainable. Okay, this was a lot. And this whole series was a lot. There is a handout called the Friendship Pathways handout that is available on the show notes for all of these episodes. You can just go to the show notes at raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast and click on any of the 5 episodes for this series about social interactions. And it's called the Friendship Pathways handout. And also, like I said earlier in this episode, we talk about these skills all the time in the Learners Lab. The Learners Lab is your kiddos, your family's social and emotional learning connection in real time with real people who have families just like you. I facilitate classes in there, clubs in there. There is a whole on demand library of lessons and activities from the past centered around different social and emotional learning skills just for you that you can use anytime when you're a member. And if you are a member of a charter school or an ESA or any organization that provides funding, we are working hard to get into those different organizations. But what I am finding, first of all, is that every single one requires a different set of steps. So I'm brand new to this and learning how to do it. And I'm the only one on my team. I have a very small team that just helps out with little bits here and there. And I'm the only one who's able to do this. So it's all me. It's a lot of work to understand and figure out what each charter school or each ESA or each payment platform needs from me in order for you to be able to use your funding on a program like the Learners Lab where you can get those on-demand classes. If you are somebody who really has thought about or has wanted to be a part of the Learners Lab for a while, and you use charter funds or ESA funds or any kind of state funding, please reach out to the organization that you're a part of and ask them to add the Learners Lab, or reach out to me to tell me how to become an approved vendor for your ESA or your charter school. I do know that a lot of them, from what I'm understanding, require a parent who is part of the organization to request that they add us to their vendor list. So if that's the case, I would love it. I would love to have you in the lab, and I have no problem taking charter funds or ESA funding, if that means that you can be a part of our community and you and your family can be learning these valuable social and emotional learning skills alongside of all of us. So inside the Learners Lab, we help you build those realistic social rhythms, planning, connection, recovery, and there's a whole network of support in there from people who really understand your kiddos exactly as they are. There are families in there with neurodivergent kids, and there are families in there with neurotypical kids. Social and emotional learning is important for all kiddos. It's crucial for neurodivergent kids. So we are there to support you and your family no matter how their brains are wired. If you've been listening through this series, I really hope that you feel less alone and more confident in your child, and that your child's social life doesn't have to look typical to be healthy. Okay, we'll be back same time, same place next week with a brand new series and episode. And I look forward to talking to you then. Have a great week. In the meantime, check out our sponsors, CTC Math, Curiosity Post, and the Learners Lab. And I hope to see you inside soon. Talk to you then. Bye.